Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at a couple of games that I played today against the famous Chinese language learning model Deepseek. Now, you probably have been living under a rock if you're unfamiliar with what Deepseek is, but it is the latest LLM coming out of China. It costs a lot less money to create than Chatgpt, which everybody has to know if you're on the internet today. At any rate, it's a really exciting new language learning model, and like many others, I'm curious to see how it will do at the game of chess. Now, we have had some experience before. We played against ChatGPT in the past. Usually for the first 12 to 15 moves, ChatGPT would play like a super grandmaster, and then it would fall apart quite quickly. So let's jump right into the action. Now, in the first game, I'm playing with the white pieces, and I open with the move e4, and Deepseek plays move e5. Here I play the move knight to f3, and now we get the move knight c6, and now I play bishop c4. Now, all this is pretty standard, but one of the reasons that I play bishop c4 here is that generally, if you play the straightforward openings, there's going to be a lot of knowledge that these LLMs have. They're going to see you play the Ruy Lopez, for example. It's going to know exactly what I'm doing and how to respond. So I want to try and play something that isn't straight standard theory, but also I want to see how well it's going to remember the board state. So we get bishop c4, bishop c5, and now I play this move pawn to c3, intending to go for d4. Now, in many top-level games, you'll get the classic Gucci pianissimo, which is where white plays something like d3 followed by c3. Just to give you a sample position here, white goes c3 and d3, and then in the long run, you prepare to play d4, but you're going to play it very slowly, pianissimo. So you go one, 2, and then potentially 3. But in this game, I decide from the get-go that when I play c3, I want to go c3 and d4 in one go. Now, theoretically, this is not considered very challenging, but I'm hoping to confuse Deepseek very early on. So we get knight to f6. Now I play the move d4, we get pawn takes pawn, and here I play the move e5. Now, white can play the move pawn takes pawn on d4, but after bishop b4, bishop d2, takes, black should play d5 to break up the big white center here. You attack the bishop and the pawn. White usually recaptures, and after castles, and rook c1. Position's pretty balanced here. Maybe a very tiny advantage for white, but the board state is pretty straightforward here. It shouldn't be super hard to play moves that are legal. Now, of course, when I say that, I'm not a computer scientist or a data scientist for that matter, but I'm assuming it won't make illegal moves, or the threshold will be much higher. Now, of course, I could be completely wrong and making things up, but that's just my view. So I go e5. And now Deepseek plays move d5, and this is the first move that I am slightly impressed by, because already here, this is standard theory, but I'm expecting perhaps the program won't have this built in. It won't know what the correct move is. And if black doesn't play d5 here, black is actually already very close to lost. If you play a move like knight to e4 here, white can go bishop to d5, and shockingly, this black knight on e4 is trapped. If you go to g5, I capture the knight. If you go to f6 or d6, my pawn will capture it. If you play knight takes f2, I simply take, and after takes and king g3, white has an extra knight on b1. Yes, the king is a little bit open here on g3, but white has the advantage. So black has to be very precise here, and Deepseek does play d5 here. Even though the knight is under attack, this pawn on d5 now attacks the white bishop. So I move my bishop from being captured, and now Deepseek moves the knight. Knight no longer can be captured either. Play pawn takes pawn, and here we get the first surprising move, which is bishop to b4. Now, Deepseek had studied the top level games that are played amongst humans. Bishop b6 is the main line, and after knight c3, castles in this position, white can play h3, castles, bishop e3, or queen d3. And in fact, right before the pandemic, I would say very specifically in the period from late 2018 through 2019, there were many top grandmasters playing this from both sides, including Levon Aronian, Magnus Carlsen, and Wesley So. At any rate, we get bishop b4 check, and now I block with the bishop, and here Deepseek decides to castle the king. Now, the computer wants black to play something like bishop to e7 potentially, or maybe queen to e7, but castles is also very logical as you get the king out of the center of the board. So I trade the bishops. Here I play a3 to kick the knight back, and now Deepseek plays the move knight c6. Now here I play the move knight to c3, and Deepseek plays rook to e8, potentially lining up an idea like f6 here to chop away at this white center. And if I take on f6, after knight takes c3, the king is in check, the queen is under attack, and this is a classic fossil where white loses the queen, whether you block the queen or you move the king out of the center of the board. So after rook to e8, I play this move h3 here. I'm mildly concerned about f6, but I'm much more worried about the fact that if I castle the king here, after the move bishop to g4, suddenly this knight is pinned, and let's just say I play a move like rook to c1, black can trade the bishop for the knight, and if I take with the queen, I hang this pawn on d4, and if I play the move pawn takes bishop, now black can go knight g5, and my kingside pawns are a little bit compromised. So I play h3, ideas to stop bishop g4, and this is where Deepseek actually finally makes a blunder. Now remember, I said before that Chatgpt, generally the first 10, I think I said 12 to 15 moves, it will survive before making a big blunder, and it turns out that Deepseek is no different. Now in this position, Deepseek plays move knight takes d4. This is a terrible blunder, simply giving up the knight, but it's interesting to note the exact wording that it used. So of course I have a notepad open with the specifics of what it said, which is it said after 13 to h3 in this position, white is preventing bishop g4 and securing this knight on f3 from being captured. Very logical, right? So it sees kind of that bishop g4 is not playable, but then it says black's best response is 13 knight takes d4, taking advantage of the pin knight on f3. Now of course with the pawn on h3 there is no pin here. If I were to play rook b1 bishop g4, something like this, I guess it at least makes sense from the general logical standpoint that if I take with the knight I lose the queen due to the pin. But after h3 knight takes d4, as you can see from what it wrote, it has lost the state of the board. It thinks suddenly the bishop is on g4 when it's not, and it also apparently thinks the pawn on h3 isn't there. And so it says y13 knight takes d4. Tactical opportunity. The knight on f3 is pinned to the queen on d1, so capturing the d4 pawn is a strong tactical move. Now obviously knight takes d4 is not a good move at all. You don't have a bishop g4 pinning the knight, so I could even go knight takes knight and there's no bishop takes queen, but of course I am a grandmaster and I play the best move in the position, which is queen takes d4. So after I play the move queen takes d4, now I'm simply up a horse and the rook on e8 is under attack, and now Deepseek plays move knight takes c3. So after we get the move knight takes c3, here I play this move bishop takes e8 in the position, and now we get the move queen takes bishop, and here I take the knight, and at this point you can tell that I have one extra rook on the board. I have two rooks, black has one rook. With the extra rook, as long as I can finish my development and castle my king, I am going to win this game. So in this position, after queen takes c3, we now get this move bishop to g4, and this is also an unfortunate blunder, and it speaks to how Deepseek seems to have tunneled or gotten stuck on this pin idea. Now I don't know exactly how their algorithms work for Deepseek, but it seems like it's been fascinated or it's been obsessed with the idea of pinning the knight, and again it loses the state of the board and it thinks we're a few moves earlier and this move is possible. So it plays bishop g4. Of course I grab the bishop on g4 at this point, and now you can tell that it's starting to fall apart. So after I play the move h takes g4 here, we now get the move queen takes e5. It's clear that it's very tough for the bot. It just can't really keep track of what's going on, and does a Botez gambit. Now even if it's lost this track of the position, it still does know what a good chess meme is, and it does the Botez gambit. Now after queen takes e5 is played here, this is important to note because I think I made some notes on this as well. It's saying that queen control, the queen occupies a strong central square, exerting influence over the board. Continuation, black can follow with moves like rook a to e8 or d4 here to further activate their pieces and increase the pressure. Again, it has some idea of the state, but it doesn't have complete grasp of what's going on. So when queen takes e5 is played, yes, it does have ideas like d4, rook e8, but it's not taking into account what its opponent, the human here, is thinking about or what the options are. So when it plays queen takes e5, of course in this position I simply play queen takes queen, and now we get the move f6, and here I play queen e6 check, king h8, and now I play the move knight to h4 here, setting up a devious trick which Deepseek doesn't see. It plays the move f5, and now I go knight to g6, checkmating the king on h8. King has no square available on g8, and black cannot capture this knight here because the rook would capture the king. So in this first game I get a very clean, very easy win. Much like Chatgpt, it's clear that Deepseek is struggling to keep track of the position the deeper you get into the game. But it does seem pretty clear to me that based on some of the opening comments that it made, that if you're looking for general thoughts about the opening phase in chess, you should actually trust him. So I decided to play one more game, this time with the black pieces, and let's get right into the action. So we get e4. I play c5, the classic Siciliano variation. We get knight to f3, d6, d4, takes, knight f6, knight c3, and now I play the move a6, which is the classic Najdorf variation. Now I could have gone for the Venice attack with the move pawn to e5. This is what I played against Fabiano and the candidates. You're probably wondering, why do I even mention this? And the reason that I mention this, for those of you guys who are watching the video, is that I am working on a book right now, and as part of the research looking into some of the stuff, I actually found out this variation is called the Venice attack. And when I first saw that, I was running through the editing process, I was like, what is this? I've never even heard of it. So it's a really cool name, the Venice attack, but at the end of the day, I decided to play the Najdorf. So I play the Najdorf variation, named after the Polish-Argentinian Grandmaster Miguel Najdorf. It's been played by very prominent world champions and GOATs such as Garry Kasparov and Bobby Fischer. So now we get the move bishop to e2, and here I play the move g6. Now initially I played the Najdorf with d6 and a6, but now I aim to play for the memes to impress the crowd, because when I play g6, this is a combination of what we call the dragon defense due to the Draco constellation, with the pawns all connecting and creating this great dragon bishop on this long diagonal. But by going a6 and now g6, I've combined the Najdorf setup with d6 and a6, as well as the dragon setup, and this is what we call the Dragdorf variation. So it's a combination of dragon and Najdorf, so we call this the Dragdorf. So now we get the move castles, and here of course I fianchetto the bishop, I put it on g7, and now Deepseek plays the move f3. Now here I play the move queen b6, and this move is objectively dubious. This is not a good move, but I'm curious to see how Deepseek will react. My purpose of playing against this is not so much just to win a very clean game. I want to see how far in the game will it get before it blunders. Can it handle something that's not standard theory? So I play this move. Now here Deepseek plays the move bishop e3, but it's worth pointing out that Deepseek tried to play two illegal moves before it finally played bishop to e3. The first illegal move it wanted to play was knight to c2, retreating the knight. Of course, there's a pawn in the way, but also it puts your king in check. And the second move it wanted to play was knight to b3, but this too is not possible, as it puts the king in check. So after a little bit of prodding, it plays the move bishop to e3. I take the pawn on b2, and now we get the move knight to a4. Here I go queen to b4, and Deepseek blunders with the move rook b1. Now there's a really interesting variation here that the computer suggests, which is the move knight to b6, forking the rook and the bishop here, because after queen takes knight, now white can go knight to f5, knight guards the bishop, bishop targets the queen, and your knight also hits the bishop on g7. And after queen c6 takes, king f8, bishop to h6, and knight bd7, apparently it's very much a game, but it's very complicated. Instead, we get the move rook to b1, and this is a blunder. It's already clear from the moment that it takes a bit to find bishop e3 that it's losing the board state, and now it plays rook b1, hanging the knight on a4. And after queen takes a4, now I simply have an extra knight, and as long as I can finish my development, the game will end very, very soon. So here Deepseek sacks the rook with rook takes b7. It's showing that it has a great understanding of the memes, starting with the Botez gambit. Now we get this. Maybe we can even get a bomb cloud if we're lucky. Now when it played rook takes b7 here, I'm going to read some of the texts. I did keep notes of this. It says, I will play 12 rook takes b7, attacking your knight on a4. I don't know why it says a4, and regaining material. This move also puts pressure on your position by targeting the pawn on e7 and potentially opening lines for my pieces. Now again, the squares are a little bit off to some degree. I don't know why it's talking about a4 or e7, for example, but at least it understands that it's taking some material. So little bits and pieces are reasonable, but overall the whole picture is not there. So when we get rook takes b7, of course I take the rook with bishop takes b7, and now we get the move knight to b3. Here I castle, we get bishop d4, and now I play the move knight c6, finishing my development, bringing the last piece into the game, followed by the rook on the next turn. We get queen to d2, and now I go knight takes pawn on e4, a temporary sack attacking the queen, and after pawn takes knight, now I can take the bishop on d4. My bishop and my queen guard this knight here, so after we get queen takes d4, now I play bishop takes queen. Now, of course, queen takes d4 loses the game, but it's evidently clear from the first game alone that Deepseek cannot play a complete game, so it doesn't come as a complete surprise that we get this move. Now I play bishop takes queen, we get king h1, and now I play bishop takes e4. Now here I've created the classic double wooden shield in the middle of the board here with the two b's. My b's are perfectly placed in this position, and at this point, I'm just going to win the game in a few moves. So we get the move knight takes bishop, I take, we get rook to f4, and now I play the move queen d2. Here, Deepseek plays the move rook to f2. Originally, it wanted to play rook to e1, which is an illegal move, but again, I prodded a little bit. It plays the move rook to f2. I was hoping it would go rook takes e4, so at least I could sack the bishop and get a nice ice skater checkmate, but it goes rook f2 instead. So now I play the move queen to e1. We get the move rook to f1. I take the bishop here, threatening the mate on g2 with the classic right triangle, and here it plays rook f2, sacking the second rook in the game. Now it could play rook g1 here. The game probably should end in a couple of moves. I think queen g4 is the cleanest move here, because if the rook ever moves, you take with checkmate. If white ever goes h3, you take, and it's also checkmate. So basically white has to push the pawns. Eventually I just create a situation where white has to push the pawn of the rook. Again, h3, queen h3 is checkmate, and if you move the rook, it's checkmate on g2. At any rate, we get rook to f2, and now I go queen to e1 check. We get rook f1, queen takes f1, and at this point the game ends due to the classic back rank or ice skater checkmate, as XQC would call it. So overall, I win both the games without any difficulty at all. It's evidently clear that these LLMs, they are pretty good at giving you some general knowledge of first 10 to 15 moves. A lot of what it was saying historically about the Nidor or about the Spanish or the Gucci piano was very, very good information for someone who's a complete beginner. But if you're looking to play a complete game against it and have an interesting time, I don't really think that's going to happen, because between the illegal moves and just the outright blunders as it loses the state of the position, it just does not play at a very high level, whether it's Chatgpt or Deepseek. But at any rate, it was fun to test out Deepseek to see what all the fuss is about. I did enjoy it, honestly. I think that for me, the general advice or knowledge it gives about the openings is a little bit better than Chatgpt in terms of quality of play. It's about the same. I don't think there's a huge difference. So it's mostly the same, but nonetheless, it was a good experience and I had a fun time doing it. And I hope that you guys at least learned something from this video, as well as what Deepseek is, if you have been living under a rock for the last 2 weeks. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you're not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with some more great content in the coming days. Hope you guys enjoyed it and have a great rest of your day. See you. Bye.